Well, welcome everybody. I am so excited to have Rena here. Caroline is a transformation coach. She's a writer and podcaster. She does the Ride of My Life podcast on the road as she meets amazing people on her healing journey and shares their experiences and hers along the way. As they work in helping and guiding others to find their true beauty and their true self. Caroline is making a positive impact on the lives of many, guiding others through anxiety and grief, using the body and mind to guide others in finding their truth and self-love. Now, self-love is kind of like a topic that we're starting to hear more and more about this concept, and people have these mixed impressions about self-love. It's selfish, it's all these different things. But today we're going to have the honor of being able to dive into the topic of trying to find self-love when you are a highly sensitive person and you have been squashed down, pushed down, told that you're not allowed to be sensitive, all the things that come and create all these different traumas within our life as being highly sensitive people. I definitely have had seasons of my life where I was extremely sensitive. Now I think I've almost learned how to manage, I can't say control it, but manage that sensitivity in a way that I can guard and protect my energy. But still show compassion and empathy without it draining my tank, because being highly sensitive people, we take on everybody else's stuff, and that's what triggers us, and we hang on to it, right? It gets heavy.
Yes.
So welcome. I am so excited to dive into this topic with you today, Caroline. And so tell me, when did you have this shift of just understanding your sensitive nature?
Honestly, I just had it earlier today. Well, no, okay. So years ago, I had started doing research on what a lot of people call HSPs, which are highly sensitive people, because I knew I was highly sensitive and I knew there wasn't anything wrong with me. And at the same time, I didn't know how to deal with it or work with it. And so for all that time, I did the research, and then I kind of fell out of it and went into my own process of healing and, other ways of doing the work through the anxiety, through the grief, especially most recently. And then today I just got done watching an incredible morning thing. Panache Desai has this like meditation thing that he does, and he does like a monologue, and he starts talking about sensitivity. And the way he was explaining this to me, I was like, oh, and it hit me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I understand where it's coming from. Now I can like connect with it. Now it's like putting me like, there was never anything wrong with me, so
that's so relieving, eh?
yeah. And I was like, for my entire life, I was like that. I always thought there was something wrong with me because I was sensitive. You want me to just go into the story, or do you have any?
Yeah, please, share that alignment, because I think there's a lot of value that we can learn from that.
Okay. All right. So here's the thing. When I was little, my mother, there's this thing called the mother wound. And for me, it's different for everybody, obviously, because we're all different. We all have different mothers. And there's also a father wound, but that's not what for me, this isn't what this is. I'm just sharing that part of it. But with my mother, she would, at the age of, when I was 4 years old, she would call me on the phone, and no, I don't have a memory of this. I did find out about this through court paperwork, but she would call me on the phone and she would ask me, why haven't you called me to tell me you love me? Or ask me how my health is. And then the rest of the sentence was, after all, I bore you.
Wow. So did you live with your mom?
No, not at that. I was living with my dad and my grandparents at the time. And so as time progressed, and I'll fast forward to when I was 43, the same thing happened. So it like proved that the information in the paperwork was true. She did the exact same thing. And I'm like trying desperately to just stand up to her and do this. At that time, I just couldn't. I was just coming into figuring things out. And I hadn't gotten there. I've been going through a lot of different things with my own children, and there was just so much going on. And so what happened was I literally got upset. I started crying. I said, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to hang up. And she kept going and going and going. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I hung up the phone. I stopped talking to her for 10 years. So that was actually 15 years ago. Since that time, I have to be, to give the progression. She died in December of 2018, but prior to her death, I had done all this forgiveness work, and I went to go see her in the hospital, and there was this amazing experience for 3 hours of both of our lives where we reconnected, because I hadn't seen her in years. Wow. Many years. And the biggest thing that really stood out for me and helped me to start healing, and apparently helped her start because she was in hospice. So she stayed alive for 2 years after that, was that after I just sat there with her and just looked into her eyes and sent her love. And her chaplain was sitting there. She's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, the chaplain's like, she's just loving you. It's okay. My mother never felt that when she was little.
Right.
So I was able to forgive her based off of her own childhood. Right. And the last thing that happened before I left was like a single tear was coming down my face, and she wiped that tear off before I was getting ready to leave. And I don't remember her ever doing that. So that like totally shifted the energy for me into healing and connecting with who I am. And that was 2018, was that 5 years ago at this, or 4 years ago at this point. And yeah, so from that point, I start, continuing my process. And until today, I didn't realize, or I knew then, but I didn't realize really how terrified I was of my mother growing up. She was this little 5'2" woman, and she was so traumatized that all she could do was scream at this little sensitive girl, and so that's what I got from her. But I still wanted my mommy, and that's the way children are, even if they're getting screamed at.
Yeah.
And so what happened was this morning, I learned that as sensitive people, we attract other people's projection or pain onto ourselves when they're acting it out on us. So it makes us feel worse about ourselves. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I just soaked in all of my mother's pain, and I'm living with it and feeling guilty and going through this whole thing. And so that was all the work I did, but I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until today.
Right.
Yeah. And so one of the things that he was talking about was how, and well, let me share this real quick. When we are sensitive and we're actually set up that way, that's our gift. So we're projecting this beautiful light out into the world, but not everybody can handle how bright we are, but we don't even know we're that bright. So they tend to shut us down by saying, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, stop being that way, because really they can't handle our sensitivity.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. And so it locks into us, and we start to believe that we're not good enough, that, we're not acceptable to anybody else. No one cares about us. All these things just start growing in our minds and, our bodies. And then we start protecting ourselves.
And we believe these lies.
Yeah, exactly. And the hard thing is that when we protect ourselves, literally our bodies are like protecting everything that we experience actually goes into the body. So it protects. And if you ever have sore shoulders or back pain or any of this stuff, it's all that protection. So yeah. And so it's like when we protect ourselves, it can create these problems with our health and our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. Everything starts to happen because they're all kind of wrapped in together.
Yeah.
And so what I found out this morning, and it just was like I said,
heavens opened up.
Heaven has opened up. Yeah. Basically what it was I don't have to be afraid of who God made me to be. Amen. I don't have to be afraid of who I am.
That's
And
right.
I'm like, and I'm telling you right now, I'm in the middle of going through this. I didn't just figure this out and now I'm doing all this great work and da, 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 da. I just figured that out this morning, you
Yeah,
know,
see, that's
and
the joy of personal development, is that it's ongoing.
right.
We never finish. It's
Yeah, we
always
never
working.
finish. Yes, it never, and it's not supposed to be finished because that's the point as to why we're on this planet. We're here to discover the peace, the love, the joy inside of us, and to find that and be able to share it with the rest of the world, not
Mhm.
give it. I don't like that. I like the idea of sharing peace
Right.
because I have to have that first. If I give it, I'm giving mine. It's like I'm
Yeah.
giving it away to somebody, which I've done that before too, you
Yeah.
know?
I want to rewind just for a quick second about the mother wounds, because just sharing your experience with your mom, I can totally relate. My mom had a lot of trauma growing up. She was thrown in the foster system when she was 3, bounced
Wow.
around like a rag doll, abused beyond measure. She
Mhm.
was just grasping, and she didn't understand how to be in a relationship without abuse. So we always had different men coming in and out of our lives. We've seen our mom like abused, like guns in her mouth, threatening to blow her head off. We've seen beer bottles smashed over her head, knocked her out unconscious. We've seen her raped. Like, we've seen some horrific things as kids growing up. Well, my older brother and I, for surely. And then my stepdad, the man that she ended up marrying, he was an alcoholic. So there was always like an alcoholism, drug abuse, the manipulation, the lack of emotional connection. And I'm a sensitive person too, so when you're sharing this and us taking on their projections, I took on my mom's insecurity to the core, and it
Mhm.
has taken me decades of trying to chisel that away to find some of my own confidence to step into what I'm doing today. Otherwise, there's no way I could do this without doing some deep, deep work.
That's right.
But I remember my mom would pull me out of bed. So like your mom would call you up and be like, demand those things. My mom would pull me out of bed and sit me at the kitchen table and talk to me, because she didn't have a counselor. She didn't have a circle of influence in her life that would come alongside her to support her, be a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on. She had me. So
Mhm.
from as early as like 3 or 4 years old, I can remember her putting me in that position throughout my whole childhood.
Mhm.
And it was exhausting. And because who am I? Like, I'm just a child. Like, you're supposed to be nurturing me. Like, why am I nurturing you? But she would always pull that from me. And I was just a really good listener and always just sympathetic. And I heard some horrific things that, we never witnessed, but she would share, when she was growing up, they put snakes in her bed and beat her with willow sticks and
Oh,
all
oh.
kinds of different things like that, right? Like, she went through some really horrific things. And um, this one time I was living on my own, and my mom, and I was pregnant with, this is just before my mom passed away. I was pregnant with my first child where I was around 7 months. And my mom had called me under the influence. So she was highly emotional and medicated. And she called me up, and we were having a discussion as who's going to come to the hospital to see the birth of her grandchild. And we got into a bit of a tiff as to like my stepdad's new girlfriend, because there was something that happened there, all this drama. And she said, well, if that woman shows up at the hospital, that's it. You don't have a mom. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think she'll show up, because she just ain't gonna. And if she does, she's gonna be there for 5 minutes just to kind of like, puff up her feathers, and then she'll be on her way.
Yeah.
You can go for coffee at that time, and it's not like, let's just not rock the boat, is all I was thinking, right? And I'm like, that's just, so we got into a disagreement about that particular thing. And then she says, well, if she shows up, that's it. You don't have a mother. And I was like, well, so here's me trying to like get my guts in order. And I responded with, then I don't give an F if I have a mother. Because what kind of mom is she? Like, she wasn't emotionally there for me. And she was always just like drawing and drawing. Like I was an empty gas tank that she kept trying to pull from. And I, I regret those words because I was stubborn and so was she. And we just were always like, no, you got to apologize first. No, you got to apologize. Like, I don't talk about like, I'm my mother's daughter. And
Unfortunately, the apple sometimes doesn't fall far from the tree. Right?
and it was 2 weeks later that I got the phone call that she had committed suicide. And
Oh,
I can never take those words back or apologize or any of those things. So that just really pushed me over the edge for a long time. But thankfully, I had this child in my belly that, and I tell my daughter this all the time, I'm like, you were my saving grace, because if I didn't have something to put my energy and focus into, that I gotta like be strong and I gotta figure this out. And did I get it right? Heck no. Like I screwed up a lot. And but I
you need
had
somebody to
something
teach
to
you.
motivate me,
Yeah.
right? And it was that wound of, not having that mother presence, and actually like they're supposed to be our nurturers and protectors and guiders, and not the other way around. And so it's hard when you're in that space, and being a sensitive person, you go through this journey in life like, I guess I'm just not valuable. Like I'm not
Mhm.
worthy. Like if my
Mhm.
own mom, da da da, you get these ideas in your head, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that you brought that whole piece up about, the fact that she committed suicide after you said what you said to her. And the thing is that she already had that wound inside of her. And
Oh, that wasn't her first attempt. I did
well,
not push her over the edge.
yes, and I just wanted that to
Yeah.
be established because sometimes people feel like sometimes we say something and that's what the thing that caused the person to do that, and that's not the case
Yeah.
most of the time, because these people, especially nowadays that we're starting to open up into this mother wound thing, where our society has created this existential problem of the wounded the wounded feminine.
Yeah.
And so being able to do this healing work for ourselves and come out of it, and especially, when we're little, we take the shame on, like I took the shame on of my mother. I took on all of her feelings and I started to find out that they weren't mine, that they were
They weren't
hers.
yours. Yeah. That's the
Right?
same with the insecurities, because my mom had pounds and pounds and pounds of
Yeah, yeah,
insecurities.
exactly. And
And I
so did
carried
mine.
those for a lot of years, and I
Yeah.
still wrestle with some of them.
Yes, and that's the thing though, when we recognize that it's not ours, when we know that it was somebody else's. And I did a lot of hypnotherapy where they did
Right.
this backward timeline or something, where they brought me to these places where it helped me to start to let go of the holding on to her emotions, because I had them since probably in utero, from what I understand.
Right.
And so I've carried that with me throughout my life. But when I did that, the work, it helped me to release that, um, the power of those dense emotions. And the more we release, and that was the thing, when you're dealing with a narcissistic mother, she's in pain too, but she
Mhm.
doesn't know how to deal with it. So the
That's
whole
right.
dynamic becomes how she reflects all that on us, and then how we have to learn how to deal with it. And then there's that back and forth, like you were explaining, and it's not easy to get through, you
No.
know? So yeah, let me just say this. I believe, for me, in saying this, that 100% of the time, especially when we were little, it was not our fault. A
Yeah.
lot of people, will take that fault, especially women, because we do that for everybody else. That's just what we
Yes.
do.
I got
Yeah.
this. Yeah. And when you say that, like all this oppression that women have had over centuries, um, I have to believe that we hold a very dear and close personal space in God's heart as women. And I strongly believe that to my core, because if you look at history, how he went out of his way for women that were prostitutes and demon possessed and rejected and abused, like Jesus went out of his way for those women. And it wasn't the men that he just went out of his way for, like it was us ladies. And then just to see how culture
Mhm.
has tried to really suppress us and cut us off at the knees. And if he can start back then, and it's that whole generational curse crap, right? Like, it's just like we're carrying our mom's stuff and our mom's carrying their mom's stuff, and
Yeah.
just continues to, like, we just carry on this heritage of torment as women, of constantly being suppressed and muted and shut down and looked at less than important, and we're not even getting paid the same as men, even though we could probably do the job just as good, if not better, than some of the men out in this world. Sorry guys, thankfully there's no men in this group, but like,
some of the men, we can't generalize. That's
well, we need them too, right? Like, they have their part to play.
Well,
but
and you're also, just to clarify too, it's like when you're talking, this has been going on for so many generations, and you're talking about the toxic male and the toxic masculine, toxic feminine. But we're not, what we're trying to do is break that now as women into the divine masculine and divine feminine. And there are many divine masculine men out there who are not like that. And
that's right.
We've had it in our DNA for so long because that's what we were taught. I mean, they pushed away in see if I get this right, with the nature-based religions in, like, I can't think, Scotland, England, you know, all these nature-based religions. It was just it was about the feminine. It wasn't about, but whatever happened produced this need for men to, you know, to push that down in us. And this is mass consciousness. This is DNA. This is in our DNA. We are fighting right now. And I don't really like using that word, but that's where we're in. That
it's a battle. Absolutely.
It is. And we're fighting to get out of that. And it's not even, it may be a battle, but it's also using who we are as women to create this beautiful space of who we are, and finding the self-love, like we had mentioned at the beginning. And it's like, there's a way to do this, but nobody teaches us this. What they teach us is to make sure we take care of everybody else first and put everybody else's needs first, and not to focus on ourselves because it's selfish, and and that is so not true, because the more we fill our vessel as women, we're built this way, the more we can, not, what was the word I used? Not give, share.
That's right.
Right?
That's so good. So good.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just downloaded that one. So.
I love those instant downloads.
Thank you. Yeah, because I said to you before we started, I came to this, I'm like, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I can't remember what I shared with you. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. So there it is. Thank you for the download.
This is so good though, because even as I come in to my adult life, I was like, I had recognized all that generational bondage. And I was like, heck to the no. And I even had, like, because my mom died at 42. And when I was turning 42, I was so scared that I was going to lose my life tragically, and that my kids would be abandoned. That fear hit me deeply because my mom lost her mom. My mom was 3. I don't know how old her mom was when she died, but my mom was 3 years old and was thrown, and there was 5 of, you know, she had 5 brothers, so 6 kids. So she would have been kind of up there in her age if she had my mom as her 6th child, right? So I'm thinking, if this is generational, I'm dead at 42. I had thought that. And when my whole year of 42, it was like completely, like, I was full of anxiety. I would literally eat something that would run through me like water. And I didn't even realize that it was a conscious thought. It was just like, I got to my 43rd birthday. I'm like, I made it.
Yay.
and my husband's like, you made what? Like, it's another birthday. Like, yes, you made it. You know, happy birthday. I'm like, no, I didn't die. I didn't die last year. And he's like, why would you have died? I'm like, oh. And that's when it just kind of like hit me in such a deep way that that was my fear throughout that whole year. And because of the generational crap, I thought my kids were going to be orphaned, and I just couldn't sit with myself with that.
Well, that's what's so scary to had always been so scary to me, is it's so intense how what we're holding on to, that we always think that, like, I remember I used to stuff anger, and I'd never rage on anybody, but my fear was raging on people. But the thing is that here's the kicker, is that what we think 99.999% of the time, that what we think is going to happen will not happen, because our minds are ruminating this. We're not listening. And the thing about our minds is that we have, like, what is it, like 80,000 thoughts a day or something like that. I mean, if you've got that many thoughts, and most of them are in the past or in the future, and, whatever, if you're not living in the now, and I will, what we said, we talk about how I managed to get myself to learn how to be in this moment. But if you're not living in the now, you're not living your life. You're not living in peace. You're not living in joy. You're not living in love. You can't even find self-love because you're so busy focused on that past, or so busy, waiting for that future. Yeah, that you don't even pay attention to what's happening. You're not with yourself. You're not in this present moment.
And you miss out on some really amazing things,
to include what to do next. Because we in the moment, we're intuitive beings, and we get these downloads. But if we're not present to the downloads, because we're either, complex PTSD, and we're flashbacking into the past on an emotional flashback ride, or we're scared of the future, and we're trying to think, what do I do? You're missing those messages if you're not in this moment. Do you want me to go into how to get to the point where you can come into this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're saying this, though, my thought is, like, I've been told, my Bible tells me that, like, we're not supposed to worry about tomorrow. We got enough problems today. Let's just deal with today. Don't worry about tomorrow.
And what is so cool, though, is that these problems are made up in our heads. They're not out there. These problems are not out there. We come up with our problems.
Well, yeah, I say I'm pretty creative. You don't have to help me out. I got that all under control.
So we can solve our problems, but again, you have to be in the moment to know what to do to solve them. They don't really even exist.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother esoteric conversation. So, I mean, I want to share with you guys the process. Like, I've been doing my healing journey for over 30 years. And when I started by reading books, and it was all external. Everything was external. I went to Native American sweat lodges. I tried different religions. I tried all different kinds of things, and a lot of stuff is therapy, and hypnotherapy, and you name it. I ran the gamut. And then one day, and I can't even tell you when it was anymore, it just a few years ago, when I moved down to Florida, and I did this personal development class, and I had gone through this really challenging, that's not even a good word for it, it was worse than that, but situation with my with a high conflict divorce, with my ex-husband, with my children, not wanting to talk to me for a very long time. That's, pieces of that are still going on, but I knew that I needed to work through that. And so I just lost my train of thought, because that's what I do. So basically what happened was, I knew that I needed to let go of all these thoughts that were coming in to my head, but I didn't know how to do that. And the thing about, well, I went to Florida, I did the personal development, I started digging deeper, did the forgiveness work on my mother, started learning how to forgive myself, and then I found out that because of what the circumstance that went on with my kids, these kids are still alive. So it's very hard to grieve a child that hasn't died, or anyone that hasn't died.
Yeah.
So it's a loss. It's still a loss. You can still grieve loss, but I didn't understand that. And then about a month ago or 2 months ago, I'm very persistent about my healing journey, and I'll do whatever it takes to get whatever it is that's going on, that's blocking me from enjoying my life, out. And so I was like, bring it. I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I think
with a little bit of hesitation, I'm ready.
And so I ended up seeing this guy. He's a therapist who does EMDR, and what came up, I can't remember the conversation now, but what came up was my mother. And that was like about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And so all these things, when we start doing our work, all these opportunities start coming into our life that don't feel like an opportunity. It feels like, hell on earth coming in a situation, or, someone saying something to us that is not really a nice thing that they said, or whatever. Something's going to show up in our lives to teach us, to help us. It's for us, to help us break through it and find that inside. So all this stuff started showing up, and I started grieving. And literally I would roll off the bed onto the floor and do this dark night of the soul. I think I did it for like 10 days straight. Every day. It was like 3 or 4 times a day. I don't know what happened. It was just like all this stuff was coming up, grief around my mother.
Right.
And my mother, I mean, her life was back in World War II. She was 4 years old when the Nazis and the SS came into Czechoslovakia, and they took, I found a letter from her father, my grandfather, where they took their villa, they took their business, they got all their money out of their bank account. Oh, gee, I wonder why there's lack in my, DNA or whatever, because they lost everything and lost. Yeah. And so they had to escape Czechoslovakia when she was 4 years old. And I don't know what else happened to her because she never said it. And then they went over to Israel and stayed in Israel from 1938 to like 1958 or something like that. And then a few years later was when I think they went to Germany. They moved to Germany, and my parents met. So, all right, I'll give it away. I was born in 1964. And so that's right at
wear it loud and proud, sister.
And what's interesting is that was like the very beginning of or not the beginning, but right in the process of the hippie movement, and all this the esoteric stuff starting to come in, and then the Vietnam War, and Martin Luther King. So we had a Black Lives Matter thing, back in the 60s. So we all came into that generation. So we're pulling all of this negative energy inside of it. And I'm probably not just holding my mother's energy, because I'm sensitive. So I'll pull on everybody's energy. So I think that's what I was releasing. I was literally feeling like I was transmuting the pain and the shame and the guilt and all this stuff for like the whole world. That's how powerful this was. And sometimes people won't grieve because they don't think it'll stop. And I didn't think in the moment that it would either, because it kept happening every day. Right. It did. And that's the thing that was so cool about it, was because at the end, I'm like coming out again, these all the angels are saying, they're like, here you are, now you can start. And now we're going to give you some more stuff to take a look at, so it doesn't end, but it gives you relief more and more and more. So you can find, it empties that. You talk about the vessel, it empties that vessel and clears all that negative energy out of you. And it gives room for you to start to see. So the darkness, or the light, is shining onto the darkness at this point. So you can see the self-love. And then when you see it, you learn tools to touch it and feel it, depending on what your gift is. Some people see things better. Some people hear things better. Some people feel it. Some people know, they have a knowing. So digging deep like that, and then getting into and finding that self-love. Oh my gosh. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here right now if none of this stuff would have happened my entire life, because I would still be on the floor the first time I had to get on the floor, over 20 years ago. And I would have stayed there. I mean, literally I had the blinds drawn. I was in depression. I couldn't see my way out. My dad's calling. I think I mentioned this earlier. My dad's calling me on the phone saying, well, why aren't you keeping all this together? Why don't you stay together with your husband? And I'm like, you don't even know half the story, and I don't want to explain it. And why can't you call me to ask me if I'm okay and not tell me what to do right now in this moment? Right. So that's where I was. And even sitting here looking at myself, talking to you about this is like, I can't tell you how incredible that feels for me, because I never thought I'd be here, and that's just so powerful for me. And these are happy tears.
No, it is like, it's a release. It's refreshing when you can share your story and it doesn't paralyze you anymore. And
Oh,
as
yeah.
you know, when you're in it and you're going through it, um, it's paralyzing. It's dark. Like you said, you draw the blinds, but we can draw the blinds in our heart, in our mind, in our spirit, everything. And it's dark and it's cold and it's lonely, and we
Mhm.
don't think that anybody understands. And that's my biggest heart, is that, like, oh come on, we all have had a taste of someone's pain and darkness. And so if we can rise up and find a way to climb out of that pit, then why wouldn't we share that knowledge and reach out a hand and help somebody up? Because
Yeah.
it is not a place that is fun to be in. And if you're in that place, and ladies out there, like, reach out, because um you will not be judged in this space. We have been through the thick of it, and we understand the pain that comes alongside all the grief and torment and trauma and all of the neglect and different things that we've all gone and experienced and gone through. And there ain't no judgment if you're self-medicating, trust me. Like, we have, I don't know about you, Caroline, but I have definitely gone through seasons where, drugs and alcohol, not so much alcohol, I don't know why, but I definitely dabbled in the drug department, and to try to numb my pain.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it always just would push me into a deeper pit, because you think that it's helping you, and it does maybe in the moment, but the after
Yeah.
effects just makes it darker.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
there's
I
no
did recognize that.
judgment.
I recognized that early on. So I never really got into chemical dependency, but I did get into codependency.
Yes, that
For
too, right?
love.
Mhm.
Don't leave me, mommy. Don't leave me. Stay with me. So every relationship that I ever got into after that was all about, I can't lose you. I've got to do what I have to for you so you won't leave me. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
was,
my,
I
that
was,
was my
yeah,
addiction.
I love that you said that and you brought that up, because I definitely have been through seasons of that. I've been married almost 19 years now,
Wow, good for you.
um, but it super challenging, because I came in with all this expectation, and brokenness, that oh God, bless my husband's heart for being so dang patient with me. But I did every relationship. My mom taught me two things growing up: spread your legs for love, and when things get tough, you pack the car and run. So
Yeah.
it's that fight or flight, right? And I definitely, every relationship that I was in, I thought, well, if we're sleeping together, he loves me. I will, we might not be compatible, but I'll do anything possible to make this relationship work. And I was infatuated and infatuated. I can't even say in love, because it was just an infatuation of the idea of someone taking care of me.
Yeah.
It
For
wasn't
the
even,
first time in your life, for once, that's what it feels like. That
yeah.
they're taking care of you. It's like, oh, look at this. I gotta stay here.
Right, because I never had that growing up. I
Yes.
was always the one taking care of the adults, like
Yes.
cooking and cleaning, and I had a younger sister and brother that's 8 and 10 years younger than I, and I was their caregiver. It was a
Yeah.
constant, stepping into roles at ages that you just don't
You had
step
no
into.
business to. Then that's the parentification I was talking about, because it shows up emotionally and physically, with the parent that you're taking care of. It doesn't just have to be, what I was talking about was more emotional. That I had to take care of her emotional needs. You had to take care of your mother's physical needs and her emotional needs.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't always show up the same way with everybody either. So, and the other, no, finish what you were saying, because I think I had something I could share.
Well,
As a tool
definitely.
also.
It is, yeah, go ahead, share.
Well, I mean, I want to share a tool that was really helpful for me, but you got to understand, if you've been through trauma and you've been through either, like I was in the Army for 8 years, I did get some emotional trauma in the Army too. So there's this thing called complex PTSD, which is similar to PTSD that soldiers get, but they have a visual flashback. With CPSD, it actually builds, all the trauma builds stacks on top of each other.
Wow.
And it can cause an emotional flashback, which an emotional flashback is basically when you're reminded in that split second that you're going through an emotion, you immediately go back into the past, into the flashback of that emotion from when it came, from whence it came as a child, when you didn't know how to deal with emotions. So you're acting out at that, whatever that age is for that emotion. And in order to heal that, you have, there's a thing where you have to start to look at that child and connect with that child and allow that child to feel those emotions. And sometimes it's scary to do that. So, you know, for me, I was able to do it without anybody around. Sometimes I would have somebody around walking me through it. This was all in the past 3 or 4 years. But this tool was like, you know, you see parents that stop their children from having temper tantrums, but in actuality, that's their way of dealing with anger, because they're children and they don't know how to deal with it in an adult way, where we figure, oh, look, this is anger is coming in and I got to let it just flow and let it release and deal with it. Just get angry in the moment and just let go of it. They can't do that. Their way of dealing with it is to go, because that's all they have. Well, guess what? Animals do the same thing. If they get into a fight out in the, you know, in the tundra or whatever, if there are two animals that get into a fight, or if you've ever seen a cat, like, or a dog even, you know, they just get into something and then they come back and they're like shaking like this. Or if you've ever been in a situation where you're scared or just got into a fight with somebody, and when you're done with the fight, you're crying and screaming and you just start shaking, that's normal. You know, so taking that normalness of that, which kind of society kind of pushes out of the way because it makes us look like there's something wrong with us, and they don't want people to look like that, right? To take that and just use that energy and release it and just let it go. They call it shaking, neurogenic shaking or something like that. And it just helps to release all that energy. But that's the first step that I did, was I would get on the bed and I would literally have a screaming and yelling temper tantrum, kicking and not, what do they say, gnashing of teeth. And you know,
I've gone into my vehicle and I would scream at the top of my lungs in my vehicle, or into a pillow or something like that. You just have to get that out.
You have to get that out. Absolutely. And the thing is that if you don't get it out, it gets stuck and more and more and more. So anytime something happens outside of you, and it will add to that. It won't flow through. It will get stuck. And that's when people feel like they're getting stuck. And do you find,
being a highly sensitive person, do you find that if you don't get it out and it starts adding on to one another, it starts reinforcing the things that people have deflected onto you, right? Like, so we start to, as highly sensitive people, we hang on to stuff and we start to believe it to be our own truth. And then when you have more of these things that come up and we don't process it and push it through, it just starts to reinforce the ideals that others have placed on us.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. And I never thought about it that way. But the thing is that we start to believe things about ourselves and we start to hold on to them because we don't know how to let go of them. And this is one way to let go of it, because it's not our stuff that we're carrying.
Or we feel if we let go, we're failing.
We're failing either ourselves or somebody else. So we did something
most likely somebody else, because we never really look at ourselves, right? As highly sensitive people, we're always looking at others.
Yes. Yes. And that's got to stop. That's got to stop, because you will never fully enjoy being in the present moment in your life if you don't stop doing that to yourself. And you're doing it to yourself at this point, because after any kind of experience with somebody else, they're moving on their happy little way, and half the time they don't even remember what happened.
No. Oh yeah, for the next 25 years.
Exactly. So do you want to let it go and enjoy your life, or do you want to hold on to that and think that there's something wrong with you when there's not, you know? And just walking through that process, eventually it'll lead to be able to learn how to grieve without the I don't do that anymore. I've stopped doing that probably for about I want to say almost a year. So I haven't had to go back into that. So once you get that out and you start learning how to connect with yourself, you don't have to do those things anymore.
Yeah, you'll just find different ways to nurture yourself, right? And I think it's important. Self-care is, you know, they say self-care and they throw it around like self-love, self-care, you got to do this, you got to hot bubble bath, you got to pedicure, you got to da. Like they have all these different things that you can do for self-care, but self-care is just nurturing yourself. You know, for me, it's like sometimes I just lay on my living room floor with my arms wide open and I just lay in silence and just allow
Mhm.
my thoughts to be kind of like categorized and processed. And
That's the dead man's pose in yoga.
it's
You're there for a
you
reason.
surrender, right? You just
Yes.
surrender.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, I find so much relief. Sometimes I'll roll up a towel and I'll do an open spine, like I lay on it with down my spine so I can open up my back a little bit. It just it's so relaxing and allows my creativity to flow more effortlessly. And especially being in this line of business and being a sensitive person, when people share their struggle, I am constantly thinking about that individual and
Mhm. Mhm.
wondering, like, how can I help them, how can I support them, how are they doing, did they do A, B, and C, and how's this situation going. Like, I'm always thinking of them.
Right.
And so that's where I just kind of allow myself to, like, okay, now how can I nourish myself,
Well,
nurture
and that's good
myself.
that yeah, that's good that you brought up the whole body thing because all of our emotions are stored in the body. They're not stored in the mind. The mind just conjures up stuff and regenerate, or, goes on over and over and over and over and over again in the head. That's actually not where you heal. You don't heal in the mind. You heal. Your body is your vehicle. Your body, you take care of your body, you heal your body, and your mind will actually follow your body, because when you feel good here, you're going to feel good here. And then the whole the spiritual, everything just comes
The
together,
energy of it all,
heal your
yeah.
body. So when you do that and you're opening space up in your body, you're also opening the space up to heal yourself.
Mm.
So that's another way, a really good, a simple way. The best thing that I ever, and it's always my go-to, especially when I can't have a temper tantrum in the middle of public or whatever, and somebody's gonna think I'm
Why
crazy.
no temper tantrums in the middle
No,
of the grocery store?
no, not allowed to, because somebody's gonna get mad at me
The
because I'm
gas
having
pump?
a temper tantrum.
I've been tempted a few times at the gas pump, I'm
I
not gonna
know.
lie.
I know. I know. So one of the easiest things to do, well, if you want to do a temper tantrum, you can go in public, you can go into the bathroom. And I don't know if you've ever heard of was it Mike? Not there's an artist. He did the scream. Do you remember do you know what I'm talking about? The scream with that weird shaped head with the guy's mouth is wide open. Look it up. But you go, it's like, you know, you don't have to yell, but if you do
Oh,
this and you just go, it still
yeah.
does the same thing, but you do it until you're tired, and then you do it some more until you're so tired that one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to start crying, which is helpful to clear all that stuff out, or you're just going to automatically feel better. But the one thing that I wanted to share is, before, after, any other time, if you're going through something, you just put your hands on your heart, and then you take a deep breath and hold it, and then you let it go. And breathing, that's why meditation, I don't like the word meditation, I like relaxing. It helps to relax your central nervous system, which is connected to your fight or flight response, your stress response. It literally starts to calm you down. You're supposed
Just
to, you go
the
into
breath
resting.
of getting oxygen throughout your
Yes.
whole body
Yes.
instead of letting it get stuck, right?
Yes. But that's the thing, is I'm talking about the body again.
Mm,
See what I'm saying? So this has nothing to do with the mind.
right.
So all these exercises that I've come to understand relates to the body. It doesn't relate. You can talk yourself through a million things, but a lot of times we'll keep ruminating in the same story, and we stay stuck in that story, and it never
They
changes.
even say like, because I did a lot of research on rejection and bitterness and all of those different uh, painful scenarios, because it's stuff that I had to work on in my own life journey. And they say bitterness is it's unforgiveness, right? Like, it's something that it escalates into bitterness, and bitterness is like dry bones, so like arthritis, different things happening within the joints. You're always achy, full of inflammation, because that bitterness is just sucking the life out of your body. And then, we don't want to go past bitterness because it gets catastrophic, right? But it's like, it's just those different things that, and it does, it escalates within the body. It's insane. It's how everything is so connected. It's that we are such unique creatures.
Right?
We
Right.
truly
And we
are.
get to think too in the process. So we're animals that get to think. So look what we get. Yay!
So just, I could keep talking to you all
I
day,
know.
love, and I'm just looking at the time. I'm like, oh snap, we
I
should
know,
kind of close this
right?
up. But just in closing, what would you say to our highly sensitive female here, women in this community that has hung on to the deflections of others that have basically looked at their sensitivity as being a negative and not a positive?
Well, let me think on this for a second. I want to be as profound as I can. um, well, first of all, letting go of the as like we talked about, letting go of the energies, the old energies of those people that kind of put that stuff on you, which aren't yours to begin with,
Right.
is
And ladies, you
probably
don't have to do that overnight. As you can
no,
hear, both
no.
of me and Caroline have taken years to get through.
Yeah, I mean, you can, it's possible to do it a little quicker than over 30 years, or I don't know how long you've been, you said 20 years, isn't yours 20 some years or whatever?
25 since it started.
25. Yeah. Yeah, you can, there are ways, but the only reason that we know that now is because we've learned the tools, and the tools actually help. So being able to process it and walk through it and have support, find support, especially if you're grieving. This is one of the biggest things. If you're grieving and someone's sitting with you and they're like, oh, everything's going to be okay, you want someone who's going to sit there and hold your space and not say a word and just love you. That's one thing. The other piece is, what would I say to someone who is highly sensitive? Ask the question again. I want to make sure.
Yeah, what would you say to someone that's got that highly sensitive person, the HSP, right? I love that abbreviation, that has basically owned the negative views of like it being, oh, you're just sensitive. Like that's not, like, just get over yourself, figure it out, right? Like, why do you have to be so sensitive? And they look at their sensitivity as being a negative. When in actuality, like you said prior to our conversation today, it is our superpower.
Yep.
And we have to be able to claim that. So what would you say to that individual that's in this space thinking like, oh, I'm too sensitive and I should just get over myself? And you know how we get into that little beat ourselves up and like, I just, maybe I'm broken, and then instead of claiming it as that I'm broken, like, no, this is my superpower.
So first of all, there's nothing wrong with you.
Amen.
When you were a child, you never did anything wrong. You were being who you were meant to be on this planet, and people around you just didn't understand it. And so they molded you into somebody that you weren't. So when you started to believe the lies that they told you, not that they didn't love you, I'm not saying that, but when you started to believe the lies that they told you, and you started to not feel good enough, and you started to feel like you got to make everybody else happy or whatever came from that, doing the healing work to let go of all those feelings that aren't even yours to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then recognizing, like I said at the beginning, I don't have to be afraid of who God made me to be or who I am anymore. I don't have to be afraid of it anymore, because that is what gets you through life. Because eventually, when you start to get into that space of your own healing and understanding of that superpower, you'll be like a lighthouse. People will be like coming to you and saying, wow, what are you doing? You're shining so brightly, because that's what you do. Your sensitivity is your light. You shine brightly, but you have to get rid of that other stuff and be persistent and be gentle and be loving with yourself.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think did I answer?
No, that is perfect. Be gentle and nurturing and sensitive to yourself, because we have to let our lighthouse shine. You need to let that light shine. Those people that might be throwing their judgments on you when they are coming up against tough waters, because we all go through it, they're going to call you because they know that you're going to have the heart and the compassion and empathy to meet them where they're at. Just
Absolutely.
like Caroline said,
Yes.
if you're grieving, you want somebody in your corner that ain't going to just tell you it's going to be okay. Like, we just want to shove something down that person's throat and rip their tongue out or whatever. I get wild.
Yeah, I go into that too. I won't do that too. Not always love and light. We are human.
Right. But we do want somebody that's going to come alongside us and just be in our presence, because, and it's the highly sensitive people that we're going to be calling because they understand. And so just let your light shine, ladies. That's, I guess, the tail end of that message. Just let your light shine. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, Caroline, this has been an amazing conversation. And like I said, we could keep going all day long.
I know, right?
Right up. But just for any of the members here that are watching today and they're like, oh, I want to know more and get some of these tools to help me really, truly break free from the generational caca that we have carried from our parents and or lack thereof their presence, and help rebuild myself. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. If you are struggling with anything from your childhood or adult years, whether it be a high school, college years, it doesn't matter. These things come up one way, shape, or form. I think it's the enemy's plan of trying to cut us off at the knees. We need to rise up our army, shine our light, and join ourselves together. So Caroline has put herself in a position of taking this message to the world and allowing her story to be that lighthouse of how she's been able to overcome some really traumatic things in her life. And now she's got the strength and the power within her to take it back and help others find their true healing. So how do the ladies here get in touch with you, darling?
So the easiest way is to just go on to my website, which is carolinerena.com. I don't know if you can read that up there, but it's there it is.
I'll put a link here in the.
It's on there. It's carolinerena.com, and then you can read what the things that I'm doing, and it's changing by the moment. And so if you go on one day and then you go back another day, it might say something different, and that's okay. But I have a contact page where you can connect with the links that I'm doing. Where you can go to YouTube and watch either my regular podcast. I've just started a Poem Talks podcast because I'm also a poet, and you can read that. You can see some of the music I did over the last couple of years, which I'm not doing right now. I'm on hold with that right now. There's links to Substack, which is the blog and the podcast together. There's links to Anchor. There's all kinds of links on there.
Oh, that's awesome.
The one.
You are so creative. I love it. Like, you're a musician too. Look at you. Got all kinds of gifts and talents.
Yeah,
love it.
Thank you. Thank you for validating that, because that was another thing I let go of my entire life. It was all of that stuff. I just walked through life like a zombie until the past couple of years. I had this amazing opportunity, and it just started it all. I gave up music when I was a child, when I was 13, and then it started back up 3 years ago. So I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for saying that, because that was like, whoo, okay.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Don't ever, when we're giving gifts like that, don't let anybody ever steal them from you.
Yeah.
We need to guard them and nurture them.
Yeah, right. Don't let them put your light out.
That's right. Because those gifts and talents are going to touch somebody. Your music will touch someone. Your poetry will touch someone. All these things that are in you that are allowing to illuminate into the world, they're meant for a purpose, and they are to be used for such a time as this. So keep shining bright, sister.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you
so much. I appreciate you coming today. I really am just so honored to have you as my guest.
Thanks.